One of the biggest streaming platforms is in trouble. That's right, Netflix. The modern day Redbox, if you will, the person that just kind of knocked off Blockbuster. R.I.P. Blockbusters, man. I remember going into the Blockbuster, looking around. You'd want to go on a Friday, because that's when the new releases come out. And it was an event going to a Blockbuster. But Netflix came out and just had to ruin everything, right? Well, unfortunately, I think it is time for Netflix to come to an end, and it is collapsing. It is in crisis. We got this video from Moon. Be sure to drop a follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let's check out why he thinks Netflix is collapsing.
Netflix was unstoppable. At one point, it was extremely rare to find anyone without a Netflix subscription, and with good reason. Netflix was the Amazon of the entertainment industry. It was revolutionizing movies and TV, creating incredible TV shows like House of Cards, Narcos, and Stranger Things. And when looking at Netflix's growth on paper, the company really did seem untouchable. Everyone everywhere was watching Netflix. Netflix became as common as the TVs we watched it on. But in the last 2 years, Netflix's growth now looks like this. Its stock price looks like this, and its subscriber growth looks like this, with Netflix losing 200,000 subscribers in just the last 3 months, and investors predicting Netflix will shed 2 million more this next quarter. So it's no surprise that Netflix's share price...
Yeah, they're shedding a whole bunch of people. Do you know why? Everybody's already watched the new season of Stranger Things. They probably had an influx of people getting a subscription because the new Stranger Things season came out, so they bought a month and canceled it. So I think there's he might talk about this, but mine just boiled down to Netflix just doesn't have very good content anymore. There's only a few shows that really like stick out and make you want to watch it, but for the most part, I don't find myself browsing Netflix like I used to.
Have gone from $690 a share to $180 a share in just 6 months, wiping around $55 billion of its value, which has resulted in hundreds of Netflix employees being laid off in recent months. It's very clear that Netflix is going through an unprecedented downfall, and its reputation is being destroyed. With some of the recent controversies surrounding Netflix, this won't come as a major shock. But how did Netflix collapse so dramatically? What caused this gigantic downfall of a once unstoppable empire? Well, after you've watched this video, you'll understand how Netflix's downfall was a result of a few key cowardly decisions.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
The year was 1997 and the internet was booming, with one site in particular changing the internet forever, Amazon. Amazon was showing to the world the opportunities emerging from the internet, because in 1 month of Jeff Bezos founding Amazon, Amazon was operating in the US and 45 other countries. And then just 1 year after its creation, and Amazon was gaining $15.7 million in revenue. 3 years later, and this figure was over $1 billion. With Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos' motto being "Get Big Fast." One man in particular was fascinated with Jeff Bezos. His name was Reed Hastings, and he couldn't believe Amazon's growth. The sorts of growth they were seeing in business was extremely rare. It was clear that Amazon was revolutionary. The internet was the new oil, and Reed wanted a piece of the pie. So with his partner Mark Randolph, Reed and Mark would try to create the new Amazon for something other than books, because they too wanted to get big fast. But then what website could they create? What would make them the new Jeff Bezos? You see, before 1997, Reed was already working on his first business, Pure Software, a company that produced products and troubleshoot software.
I don't remember that.
Because of this, Reed gained a good understanding of the internet, website creation and coding, but he didn't have an understanding of management. So much so that he begged the board of the company to kick him out, but they refused, and in a long and excruciating...
Imagine like trying to get yourself fired, and they just like, no, stop it. We're gonna keep you. You know, he wants to be kicked out. He's like, no, you're here.
2 years at his own company, he finally left and wanted to start anew. He knew his business would have to be online. Online business was where the real money was at. That was very clear. But where was the gap in the market? Well, funnily enough, this question was answered after Reed forgot to return a videotape to Blockbuster, claiming, quote, "I had a big late fee for Apollo 13. It was 6 weeks late and I owned the video store $40. I had misplaced the cassette, it was all my fault. I didn't want to tell my wife about it. And I said to myself, Am I going to compromise the integrity of my marriage over a late fee? Later on my way to the gym, I realized they had a much better business model. You could pay $30 or $40 a month and work out as little or as much as you wanted. End quotes. And so weirdly enough, it was Reed's gym membership and the annoying late fee given to him by Blockbuster that was the fire that would change Reed's life forever, taking him on a life-changing journey. It was these two factors that led to Reed creating a shipping company based around the new technology of DVDs. And because of his experience with Blockbuster, he would make having no late fees a selling point. Reed didn't know it yet, but his idea of new age media.
So at first, that was a really good idea, like not having any late fees for that exact reason. But what Netflix did is you couldn't rent another video or game or whatever it may be until you returned the previous one. So it's kind of like a give or take, like, hey, if you want more, give us back the other one and you can get a different one. You I'm saying you can get more. So there's no late fees, but you couldn't rent more until you return the other, which is how it should be anyway.
Media distribution would lead to the bankruptcy of Blockbuster and eventually introduce a service model that would change the entertainment industry forever. In a similar way to his gym membership, Netflix's original business model involved a monthly subscription where users were free to order 3 movies. The subscribers could keep them as long as they wanted and then swap them for others once they were done watching. Despite DVDs being a brand new medium at the time, Reed saw the potential of shipping small compact discs rather than the standard VHS boxes most people were used to picking up from rental stores. The distribution process was streamlined with prepaid Netflix envelopes and fast shipping times, and this business model eventually started causing rental stores to lose substantial profits. Netflix was following in the footsteps of Amazon. It was destroying its competition. So much so that Jeff Bezos himself offered to buy the company for $50 million in 1998. However,
now we got his attention.
Disagreed on where to go from here. Mark wanted to sell to Jeff Bezos. He feared that if they didn't sell, Amazon would create their own business to compete with Netflix. However, Reed was adamant on declining this offer because, quite simply, Netflix operations were groundbreaking. They were doing extraordinary work. They were doing so well that their success mirrored Amazon. They had a great website, deals with DVD manufacturers, and already knew how to source almost every DVD on the market. But then again, if they took Jeff Bezos' money, they would both be set for life and would never have to worry about money ever again. However, what fun would that be? Reed wanted an empire. He wanted to be the next Amazon and make his mark on the world. Both founders saw the immense potential in Netflix. However, their difference in opinion about the Amazon acquisition would later come to stain the company. They both had very different visions of the future of Netflix.
Well, obviously, once anyone makes it big, right? Once everyone has a good idea or a great topic or whatever it may be, a great business model, everyone else is going to be jealous of it. Everybody else is going to want a piece of that pie. Netflix did something first that everyone else is like, crap, why didn't I think of that? You know? So Netflix kind of cornered the market first, and everybody else is trying to play catch up. They go, yes, I am, Schmitty. Thank you, my dude.
Expand Netflix's DVD distribution capabilities, while Reed wanted to focus on the online side of the business. It was these major differences in the future of Netflix that caused the two men to splinter off, with both of them focusing more on their respective areas in the company. These differences eventually caused the two men to fall apart, with Mark eventually leaving Netflix while giving the CEO position to Reed. And while to some this might have seemed like a Machiavellian ploy from Reed to gain more power, this really wasn't the case. Reed didn't like being CEO, as evidenced by his first business, and in this time, the challenges facing Netflix were mounting up. Eventually, the challenges were causing so much stress to Reed. Reed couldn't handle being the CEO anymore, he hated management, and so he decided to sell the company and be free. So in 2000, Reed offered Blockbuster the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million. However, bear in mind that back in 2000, this was a time when Blockbuster was still raking in over $700 million in profit a year.
Think about this, guys. Think about this, okay? Blockbuster Video had a chance to buy Netflix when it was on the rise, before Netflix became what it is today. Which, I mean, lately it's kind of been crap. But, like, its meteoric rise, Blockbuster could have bought it, and we could still have Blockbusters today. Think about that for a moment.
At the time, Blockbuster laughed at this offer. Blinded by their success, Blockbuster was still dead set on rental stores, and so they turned down his offer. But Reed was so desperate to leave Netflix that he even offered to take control of Blockbuster's online brand and work on scaling their own business. But even this offer was refused. This is how little Blockbuster thought of Netflix. But Blockbuster wasn't the only one. In fact, by 2000, a lot of people were starting to see Netflix as a doomed business. By this point, DVDs and online shopping were only appealing to a relatively small audience, all while Blockbuster's business model was making huge profits with a growing customer base. This was very worrying for Netflix's future. Blockbuster, a giant mega corporation, surely had a pulse on the future of entertainment. They must have seen that Netflix's future was doomed, which stressed out Reed even further, and Reed, like in his last business, desperately wanted an escape route. But then unfortunately for Reed, the problems for Netflix would only get worse from here.
Oh, of course. It's gotta get worse before it gets better, right?
Internet companies had been on a continual rise in the stock market. The rise of the internet sparked a frenzy among investors, who rushed to invest in new businesses. Without a business strategy, a product, or a track record of earnings, and these startups were able to acquire enough money to go public. However, most of the companies taking investors' money were completely hollow companies, barely making any money and running through all their investors' cash, eventually causing the bubble to burst and a bear market to ensue on the internet, resulting in investors selling everything and running away from the online world.
The volume is across the board. I mean, we're at 500 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, biggest decline since September 17th, after 9/11.
This dot-com bubble affected online shipping and telecommunication companies particularly hard, with many of these companies being bankrupted and forced to close permanently. Larger companies like Amazon and Cisco were also significantly affected, with Cisco losing 80% of its stock market value. Perhaps Amazon's success story was all too good to be true. Maybe the internet wasn't the new oil. Maybe Jeff Bezos wasn't a business genius after all. So of course this was a major blow to Netflix, as even though the business specialized in DVD shipping, their entire business model was based on having an online website. Reed had always insisted on this. He was following Jeff Bezos' blueprint. However, by doing this, the site was left with only 300,000 subscribers. And to make matters even worse for Netflix, a year later some planes would fly into a couple of towers in New York, leading to an even worse economic environment and harder financial times for the company, leaving Netflix with only 80 employees. All while Blockbuster was focusing
only 80?
on a completely offline approach, rendering them completely immune to the dot-com bubble, making even more profits and putting Netflix into the ground. Reed's vision for Netflix was crumbling into dust. He had only one choice to survive.
For
he
now.
had no choice but to take Netflix public, creating an IPO of $15 per share of Netflix on the Nasdaq. However, brighter days were just around the corner. 2007 was the year Netflix became the Netflix we know today. It was also the year that the final nail in Blockbuster's coffin was placed, because since 2004, Blockbuster's profits have been in continual decline. The main reason behind this being Netflix controlling the major share of DVD distribution, along with Netflix's online presence and better customer
You could have bought them.
Because of this, by 2009, Blockbuster had lost 90% of its market value and over $500 million in a single year, while at the same time, Blockbuster was in debt to their parent company. And after years of continuing to lose profits, the company eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2010 after being over $1 billion in debt. Meanwhile, Netflix's profits were steadily increasing. However, their streaming service didn't have much of an impact initially, since there was only a fraction of content available to watch, and all the best-selling movies were still on DVD. It was clear that Reed's ambition to scale Netflix's online potential was now the way forward, and so to reach widespread appeal, they needed to secure deals from publishers to stream their content. This was the status quo for a few years, as Netflix...
Man, like I said, Blockbuster had a chance, okay? Blockbuster had a chance to be, the king, right? King, if you will. But they're like, online. So many people kind of slept on the internet. So many people kind of just like, what is this internet thing, this digital space, blah, 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 which I'm not really sold on cryptocurrency yet. But it's like, is cryptocurrency the next, internet lull? Where people are like, internet? Oh, I'm not going to sit on my computer and order stuff, blah. Now look, everybody everywhere uses the internet. Is cryptocurrency now going to be the next, digital space where, what? You have a credit card? What? You have a debit card? Psh, just take my crypto. You know what I mean? It's like, people are going to use cryptocurrency down the road. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm still kind of hesitant about crypto, but if you look at history, everybody thought Netflix was a joke. Now look at it. Now every single company has its own streaming services. Y2K? Oh my God, don't get me started on Y2K. I remember that. Everybody thought computers were so dumb that in 1999, when it hit the year 2000, they thought computers were going to think that it's year 1900. Are you kidding me? Come on. I guarantee, I don't want to start a conspiracy here, but I think that Y2K hoax was a ploy. As a marketing ploy by big businesses to just get a quick dollar really fast. Thoughts, chat?
Continued signing deals with media networks to gain exclusivity rights for various movies and TV shows. However, things changed in 2010 when Netflix eventually hit it big after Sony Pictures offered them the rights to Breaking Bad. And weirdly enough, Breaking Bad and
love this
success
show.
was intertwined. You see, before Netflix, AMC was actually considering cancelling the show after its 3rd season. That was until the 4th season premiered on Netflix, where Breaking Bad would gain a massive audience over the remaining course of the show and eventually become renowned as one of the world's best TV shows. And it was because of Breaking Bad's success that Netflix had the most significant rise in subscriptions they had ever seen before. Similar to Netflix, Breaking Bad was another novel idea. The show's premise was something unheard of at the time. The protagonist was designed to change, and the show already had an endpoint in its inception. This contrasted with standard TV programming such as The Simpsons, where shows were designed only to have a general blueprint and stay on the air as long as possible. The success of Breaking Bad on Netflix permanently changed the potential of TV storytelling, and more importantly for Netflix, it proved that the platform was now extremely commercially viable. And with all this increased revenue, Netflix would invest in expanding their services both domestically and abroad, launching their websites in Canada, then in South America, and eventually in Europe by the end of 2011. They then started further expanding internationally, building offices in Canada, Europe, Asia, Latin America, Japan, South Korea, and the UK. Reed was seeing so much success now that he even caught the eye of Mark Zuckerberg, landing his spot on Facebook's board of directors in 2011.
Good for them.
In fact, Zuckerberg was so impressed with Reed's culture of continuous rapid innovation that he began working with Reed to expand both Facebook and Netflix's socialization features. And in addition to the new international streaming locations and the numerous new establishments, high-end producers like Warner Bros., Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon were all looking to secure deals with Netflix to start streaming their content on the platform. Compared to other distributors at the time, Netflix had a different strategy when it came to securing the publishing rights for TV show pitches. Netflix would pay more upfront for publishing rights than any other distributor, the catch being that they would get more of a substantial stake in franchising, merchandising, and pretty much everything else to do with the intellectual property rights. This strategy worked well initially, but would eventually backfire later down the line once more streaming services.
That's what I'm saying.
Like Disney began to.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody and their sister now is a freaking streaming platform. That's probably one of the main reasons why Netflix is collapsing, because everyone's like, oh, we're just going to exclusively stream our stuff on our platform anymore. You know?
Realized they didn't need Netflix, and they would cut them out of the deal by simply making their own platforms. However, the publishers still needed to wait for the content rights to revert back to them, so most shows were able to remain on Netflix until around 2018 when they began to get pulled. But by this point, Netflix was already a giant. By creating House of Cards, Netflix was now revolutionizing the production industry. This was the time before Netflix adaptations became a joke. In this time, Netflix was distributing some pretty great shows like Narcos, BoJack Horseman, Daredevil, and what would eventually become their crown on the jewel, the 1st season of Stranger Things. By Breaking Bad, Stranger Things became an instant hit when it was released on Netflix. It was their biggest original success by far, with the show gaining widespread cultural influence and leading to a massive.
Netflix collapsing because they keep raising their prices, but so I agree with that. They are continuing raising their prices, and I don't really think, other than a select few shows, the quality of them is not good anymore. Like, all these other companies are pulling their products out. There's no Disney on there anymore. Marvel, they're all Star Wars, all gone. Right? Other companies are pulling their stuff out of Netflix, so they're then left with trying to create their Netflix originals. Well, aside from a couple, there's not a lot of Netflix originals that are worth it.
Boost in subscriptions. It seemed like everything was set for Netflix. Reed had made it. Netflix was now the new Amazon of the entertainment industry. Every month they were increasing in subscriptions. They were producing tons of quality content at a fair asking price, and many publishers were looking to introduce more shows on the platform. And by the end of 2015, Netflix expanded to over 100 countries. In just 5 years, Netflix had grown 575%. These were the golden years for Netflix. It was the peak of their status. However, in 2016, this would all start to change. And 2016 also happened to be around the same time that BlackRock started investing heavily in Netflix, accumulating over 22 million shares in the company. And this was the moment where Netflix's story begins to take a much darker turn.
Here we go.
But before I continue, I want to shout out today's sponsor, Established Titles.
Established Titles
is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred.
Alright, let's get it.
And why, we need to understand what BlackRock actually is. Now, BlackRock is a company that most people have never heard of, and yet this company quite literally owns the world. Most US banks are controlled by BlackRock. BlackRock owns all the major pharmaceutical companies.
Oh,
BlackRock
great.
owns most of the mainstream media.
Illuminati.
BlackRock
Sweet.
oversees roughly 10% of all stocks traded worldwide. And this company is now taking over governments, which has allowed BlackRock to amass over $10 trillion in assets. Yes, trillion. BlackRock is worth half of America's total GDP, which is why both the American and Chinese
Illuminati, let's
government
go.
rely on BlackRock to escape recessions. And it's also why BlackRock's founder and CEO sits on the boards of the Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. No other company in history has had this much global influence. And so surprisingly enough, it was this company that corrupted Netflix. And this was for a reason. But to understand why BlackRock chose to poison Netflix, we first need to look at the power of this company. Because this company is so influential that the Federal Reserve practically begs BlackRock to protect them. And with BlackRock's founder Larry Fink having personal connections with the former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, BlackRock is in control of multiple major banks, with Larry Fink being largely regarded as the most powerful man in America, and quite possibly
the world.
Which is why BlackRock has been fundamentally ingrained in every aspect of the Western financial system. In the words of Bloomberg, BlackRock is effectively, quote, a fourth branch of government. But what does any of this have to do with Netflix?
Telling you, everybody's corrupt, man.
Well, for several
Everybody.
years now, Larry Fink has been obsessed with a company rating system that acts as a proxy woke score called an ESG rating. And this is a very important point to understand. This ESG rating is the key explanation for Netflix's downfall. Here's why. An ESG rating, according to BlackRock, measures a company's exposure to long-term environmental and governance risks. These risks include issues like energy efficiency, worker safety, and board independence, all of which will cause companies to have significant financial consequences if they're not followed properly. And to be honest, if it just stopped there would be no issues here at all, as this is a very good way to rank a company's ability to be a viable long-term investment. However, the issue comes from the social and political rankings this entails. This came to the surface in 2018 when the BlackRock CEO wrote a letter about ESG scores titled "Contribute to Society or Risk Losing Our Support." In the letter, he stated, quote, "Society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose," which is quite an ironic statement coming from a company with strong financial ties to the Chinese Communist Party, but I've already spoken about this in a previous video. However, this is a very important point to understand, because since BlackRock is a major shareholder in Netflix, their stake significantly impacts Netflix content, as Netflix desperately needs to have a high-ranking ESG score.
Which I'm surprised. Again, I'm sure he'll get to it. It's all calculated. It's all for a reason. But I'm surprised that with such a powerful company like BlackRock having such a big stake in Netflix, that they wouldn't do as much as they can to make it more profitable, so in turn they're more profitable. Like, why would they want to get such a big stake and then not do anything about it? You know what I mean? Like, ruin the company they spent all kinds of money getting invested in. I'm sure he'll get to it in the video, but I'm just trying to think about why right now.
Investors will pull out. And if investors see that BlackRock and a stock predicting machine called Aladdin suggest pulling out of Netflix, then other investors will follow suit. And because Netflix's business runs on major thin margins, having investors pull out of the company would be...
I wonder if BlackRock's sabotaging them on purpose. Chat, stay with me for a second. What if BlackRock is sabotaging them on purpose, so then Hastings ends up selling Netflix, or BlackRock buys Netflix, so then they can own Netflix outright, start pumping more money into it, and boom, Netflix is back. I figured it was sabotage, to be honest. Yeah, it's starting to sound more like sabotage. Like, why not own part of the company, ruin that company to a point where the owner sells it? Now you own said company that you know damn well is successful, was successful, and will be successful. Not to mention a company like BlackRock has ties in almost every other company, sounds like. So I'm sure if they could get deals and business deals and movies and shows and whatever, they're going to bring Netflix back to its prime after they get full control of it. I mean, sounds like a sabotage.
Be disastrous for Netflix. So in recent years, with BlackRock being increasingly vocal for certain political and social beliefs, Netflix is now having to toe the party line. Now, to be honest, Netflix can't really do anything about this.
So you say a voice, but Netflix is so low when it comes to competition, though. I don't see them coming back to be a big success. Why do you think Netflix is bad right now? Like, why do you think Netflix is so low? You said earlier they raised their prices, but the quality of their shows is questionable, right? That's like your main reason, which is a very valid point. I absolutely agree with you. Now think about this scenario. BlackRock, who has trillions of dollars, trillions, sabotaged Netflix, which is a very well-known brand, right? Everybody knows Netflix, understands what it is. Sabotage this well-known brand, get full control of this, and all of a sudden, this company that was struggling financially has the full entire backing of a company with trillions of dollars to then be able to pump out better quality shows. And all of a sudden, Netflix starts to look good again because the quality of shows on Netflix is increasing because now this trillion-dollar company is backing them completely. A huge company looking for money isn't going to lower their prices. And like you said, every other dog has streaming service. Yeah, so with everybody having a streaming service now, 100%, I think BlackRock has their hands in everybody's cookie jar, you know? So I think there'll be kind of back channels of, hey, let me stream this, let me have this on, let me have the rights to this. You know what I'm saying? I feel like BlackRock's that one company that's kind of pulling the strings of all the bigwigs.
I mean, you may think that Netflix can just seek investment dollars from some other firm that doesn't care about being as woke as possible. But Larry Fink has already thought of that. That's why he developed BlackRock's Aladdin service, a management software used by nearly every major investment branch and firm out there.
Aladdin, which stands for Asset, Liability and Debt and Derivative Investment Network, is practically magical for many reasons.
We don't actually need... That's true, we don't need Netflix anymore. You're right, 100%.
Handling a huge chunk of the world's financial assets. The technology cuts across every asset class and every industry in the world, making it unarguably the most useful piece of tech in the financial space.
This Aladdin software coerces institutions to also use the ESG rating system, because if they don't do this, the companies have to go up against the most powerful and entrenched corporation in the world. Companies are financially pressured to increase how woke they are to raise their ESG rating. Otherwise, if it's too low, they will essentially be blocked from the market. Which is why pretty much every company in the West pushes the exact same views on every current issue. Because none of them would dare cross Larry Fink or any of the other investment managers. You see, none of these businesses actually care about politics at all.
Nope.
All they care about is the approval from investors. And as a result of this,
it's all about money.
Netflix's content has been adapting to these standards, with the company placing a greater...
Here you go. Voice is talking about exactly what you're saying. Why their product, why their quality is not good anymore. It's exactly this part of the episode, or this part of the video. The ESG, the rating system, right? That's what investors look at. That's what investors go off of. Larry Fink and BlackRock own said investing company. So here's what happens. They're like, oh my God, we got to do everything we can. We got to modify. We got to be woke. We got to do all of these things because all the investors are looking at this ESG scale. Well, who controls that ESG scale? BlackRock and Larry Fink. So I'm telling you, it's a slippery slope, and it smells like sabotage. Netflix is going to die. Cheezel. That's the way it sounded. 100% it's the way it sounded.
Emphasis on being a mouthpiece for social and political talking points. This shift in tone became evident after 2016 when Netflix would start to distribute more content that put a focus on political pandering over competent storytelling, releasing a number of series and films with overt and questionable political talking points, with Netflix creating its own films that were a far cry from beloved series like House of Cards and Narcos. Instead of getting great thought-provoking content, as a Netflix subscriber, you now get Cuties, a 2020 French film that explicitly sexualized.
Oh my God, chat. This was a huge scandal. Do you remember this? It's about this group of young dancing girls that were like a dance troupe. You know what I'm saying? That would go around and do like dance competitions and whatever. But the way they were dancing and the way their things that they were wearing, their outfits they were wearing, the way they were dancing was so very sexualized. It was disgusting. Disgusting. And like, yeah, oh yeah. I'm telling you, it was absolutely horrifying, disgusting, and Netflix really, really messed up here with this. Absolutely ridiculous.
Young children. The film was about an 11-year-old girl who joins a supposed free-spirited dance crew and defies her family traditions. However, this movie contains numerous scenes of children dancing provocatively towards the audience. But if I talk any more about this subject matter, I'll probably get striked on YouTube. However, this film was so bad that Netflix even got hit with CP charges in a lawsuit coming from a Texas federal court. This case is still currently in progress, but this show is just one of many. Another awful example of Netflix's new releases is titled Sex, Love and Goop. As you'd probably expect from the title, there isn't really a whole lot of substance in the show. It's really essentially just a sexual instruction manual enacted by Gwyneth Paltrow. This is a high-budget show, but there's no plot, characters, conflicts, or even resolutions. So then why is Netflix focusing on content like this instead of things like House of Cards? I mean, this happened just a few months ago in April 2020, when Netflix released a show called He's Expecting, which might as well be the pinnacle of modern Netflix content. The show is this bizarre, overtly sexual, clumsy, and politically charged narrative about a man who becomes pregnant. Yes, we're talking about a man becoming pregnant. I mean, if you want to know audiences' true opinions, just look at IMDb's score of this film. This film is literally about a man facing prejudices because he's supposedly pregnant. So why is Netflix making all this crap content? What do they gain from releasing this kind of content? And why do they always focus on ham-fisted political narratives and borderline pornographic material? I mean, these shows always bomb among users. Just look at the film ratings. No one likes this content. No one's asking for this. So what's the point? Why is Netflix focusing on this? Why are they putting so much money into these shows?
Cheezel. Men cannot have babies.
Creeps who only care about getting their progressive messages across? Well, maybe, but there are some actual reasons why this is happening. It's not just because Netflix as a company is inherently bad. It's not because of some weird creepy executives or because everyone in the company wants to virtue signal for political reasons. It's because they're a modern business, a business that is economically forced to focus on one aspect above all others. And that focus being their ESG score BlackRock assigns them, which is part of the reason why companies like Netflix and Disney are attempting to further raise their ESG scores and have started producing woke content at an unprecedented rate.
God, that really pisses me off. Like, oh, God, that really pisses me off because I love Disney movies, right? I love Disney in general, but man, Disney's just starting to get very controversial lately. Disney is just starting to lose its edge. I was hearing bad reviews about the new Thor movie. Thor Love and Thunder is getting some of the worst ratings that any major Marvel heroes had, and it's because they're trying to do too much of this woke stuff. You know what I'm saying? I may get hate online, but there are Cheezel. Okay. That is a whole other topic. That is a whole other conversation, but I agree with you 100%, but that's a whole other topic.
Strangely, by doing this makes them get more investments. They don't actually care about the audience watching
like I said, we're not going to do that, but it's
more investments into the company. However, by not focusing on the customer, they're now starting to see the consequences of this. Because this extremely tiring content creates a drought for people looking to enjoy media that's not bombarded with unsubtle political undertones sponsored by multi-billion and trillion-dollar corporations. But then how do we know that ESG benchmarks are more important to Netflix than its content or technological improvements? Well, Netflix puts in the time, money, and effort to publish an ESG inclusivity report annually. And even more telling was that their research
money talks, guys. Money talks.
Content analytics in the last 2 years.
Not the pander to the
2019 to 2022.
The investors.
They barely even talked about encoding inequality, and at the same time they hid their audience ratings due to lacking performance for their increasingly woke content. And when Netflix does occasionally produce something edgy, original, and entertaining, they always get in big trouble for doing so. For example, when Netflix released Dave Chappelle's comedy special, this had devastating effects for the company's ESG score. According to Ethos ESG, because of Dave Chappelle's special, Netflix's ESG rating on a statistic called LGBTQ equality dropped to 2.6 out of 100. And for reference, Fox News has a score of 23.4, a score almost 10 times higher than Netflix's. And so you see, this is the sort of pressure that Netflix faces when it produces original, edgy content. And so this controversy surrounding Dave Chappelle's special gave us an excellent example of BlackRock's policy in action, and how a company's ESG score can be destroyed in an instant. While audiences seem to like Chappelle's material according to the ratings, BlackRock certainly didn't, which is why one of the CEOs of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, issued a company-wide email on October 8th, In the email, he bravely
His
announced
Netflix
that
collapsing?
was proud of the company's
Maybe.
partnership with Chappelle.
Batman?
But of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
the woke mob at Netflix didn't like this, and so Netflix employees initiated a company-wide walkout to protest the choices made by upper management. However, somehow, with all of this pressure, Netflix unexpectedly continued to stand its ground, and the Dave Chappelle special still remains on the platform to this day. And this sentiment has only started to come back at Netflix. Netflix is now actually starting to push away
that, Polly.
culture. Not very long ago, the company CEO stated, "If you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you." This used to be a very popular issue, so it's an interesting time.
Man, they're going
And
they're
again,
going
just a few weeks
hardcore. They're
ago,
100%. They're
MrJGilbert
doubling
released a
down.
comedy special containing more jokes the media deemed phobic. The Netflix CEO actually stood on the side of the comedian, saying that the only way they can figure out what's acceptable is by, quote, crossing the line every once in a while. He further stated that he thinks it's very important that American culture has freedom of expression, adding that, "I always said if we censor in the US, how are we going to defend our content in the Middle East?" However, this has only been happening in the last few weeks or so.
I think Mr. J is like, is Netflix collapsing? Me, maybe. I'm down. Yeah. Polly, how we doing? Thank you, man. Wow, talk about Netflix being high and mighty. Oh man, Creature, we've been going down this rabbit hole with Netflix, and the episode's almost done. Then we'll talk more about it.
And this might very well be because of Netflix's recent subscriber loss. By trying to get good ESG rankings, Netflix's company has been in decline. And so the CEO is trying to save the company by saving face in front of the general public. Because through producing all this woke rubbish, Netflix lost over 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter 2022, laying off over 150 employees. With the main cause of this being their stale shows, rising prices, and overt desperate political pandering. In fact, it's got so bad that Netflix is projected to lose another 2 million subscribers during the second quarter, with its stocks plummeting 39%. And now with all the big company contracts that leased major studios' content to Netflix are now expiring. And so with these contracts expiring, competitors are pulling their content from Netflix and entering the market themselves. And these aren't small competitors. These are giant mega corporations creating things like Disney+, Apple TV+, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime Video, and Paramount+. And due to the sheer number of all these new streaming services, people aren't able to afford subscriptions for every single show they want to watch. So how can Netflix even stand out anymore? How can they get their users back and be the top streaming platform once again? Well, the answer is clear. Stop focusing on trying to please an unpleasable group of losers on Twitter. Stop trying to pander to BlackRock's social credit system. I mean, so far BlackRock's ESG score has been far more damaging for the company than it would have been just ignoring it. Because all the consequences of pandering to this ESG score, producing all this terrible unoriginal woke content, has led Netflix to lose billions of dollars. But finally, the Netflix management team seems to be waking up to this. I mean, in fact, Netflix is now purging its most vocal social justice warriors, with Netflix telling its team, if you don't agree with the content on our streaming platform, go work somewhere else. Quote, not everyone will like or agree with everything on our service. The company said in a cultural memo to its employees, while every title is different, we approach them based on the same set of principles. We support the artistic expression of the creators we choose to work with. We program for a diversity of audiences and tastes. We let viewers decide what's appropriate for them, versus having Netflix censor specific artists or voices. As employees, we support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our own personal values. Depending on your role, you may need to work on titles you perceive to be harmful, the company added. If you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you, which might be the turning point in Netflix. This could indicate a new rise of the company. However, this slow, painful death for Netflix may just be inevitable, mostly due to their culture and company being infested with workers and investors who see the company as a means of preaching social change rather than entertainment. But if Netflix can't change its content soon enough, the company quite clearly doesn't have long left.
Right. They definitely do not have long left. Oh my gosh, guys. That was some good stuff. Now, here's the thing. I fully agree with what Voice was saying earlier. Voice was like, they're raising their prices and not producing good content. Like good quality content. Chappelle didn't do anything wrong. Oh my God, he tells jokes. People are too sensitive. That's the same thing you're kind of talking about. I mean, so you're right to an extent, Cheezel, that it's kind of like the whole Will Smith thing, right? Where Chris Rock told that joke. You go into that situation, you know, hey, he's gonna crack jokes. He's gonna tell jokes. Anybody could be a target. He cracks a joke, and for some reason, Will Smith just didn't like it and went up and slapped him, right? It could be a thing of sensitivity, but it's also people nowadays are not worried about people's feelings anymore. They're worried about money. That's what it boils down to. Okay. Netflix is changing their ways. They're getting away from their core principle because they're worried about their money, which rightfully so, because money controls everything. Money talks, right? That's the way it is. Well, Netflix is having a hard time because its ESG rating score is basically controlling the benefactors and controlling the people donating all the money. And who controls that is this BlackRock company who has trillions and trillions of dollars. So they're trying to do everything they can to cater to this company that probably doesn't care and has an ulterior motive. Netflix started because the owner of Netflix was late from Blockbuster. No, Homer, 100%. Him having a late fee for Blockbuster was like, what? What is this? I was like, you know what? I'm going to create my own online program. Absolutely insane. What do you guys think about Netflix collapsing? Why is Netflix collapsing? And what do you think can bring Netflix back?